In my work as a session drummer, I have to create a really wide range of sounds from a wide range of genres, and which is why I have so many different drums and cymbals and percussion to work with. But it can get really time consuming having to, take a whole kit down, put a whole totally different kit up, mic it again, and, swap all this stuff around. So I've really been trying to just streamline my studio and make it work as easily as possible, as flexible as possible, and as wide a range of sounds as I can get. A big part of the plan is to really optimize all the different kits I have, the microphones and the preamps and inputs in my converter, so that I can really get as much setup as possible so that there's as little to change when it's time for, let's say, a different genre. So I had some downtime over the holidays and did some rewiring and added a couple new things to make this room really work for me. And I want to take you on a little tour of what I'm working on. This is my main rig. I use it for most sessions that are just, I need great sounding drums, or it's a very modern thing, or I just, need absolute flexibility. It's a set of Ludwig Classic Maple in the Legacy Blue finish, which is one I love because I'm kind of colorblind, but I can see that one. One custom detail is the bearing edges. I had all the bearing edges on this drum cut with Ludwig's rounded over edge, which is more of a vintage style. It really warms up the tone and actually cuts back on some of the decay. I don't want my drums to ring forever. I want to get a really warm, solid punch out of it, and then the tone to go away, so that I'm not endlessly having to gate things. And this bearing edge really accomplishes that for me. I'm a big fan of it. Heads are all by Aquarian with texture-coated Response 2 on top, Classic Clears underneath, and a clear Force 1 batter on the bass drum. I'm a big fan of that head for low, punchy sounds. All the hardware is set up for maximum flexibility, where all I have to do is pull the drum out and put a new one in without having to change any stand or any other connection, anything like that. The foundation of the kit, being the kick drum and the toms, pretty much stays constant. The stands almost never move. What I am doing endlessly is swapping out snare drums, hi-hat cymbals, ride cymbals, crash cymbals, bass drum beaters, that kind of thing. Sometimes I'll add or subtract toms depending on what the track needs as well. Swapping out the kick drum beater can make a big difference on just how the track feels and kind of sits in the mix. And I found these three beaters kind of give me everything I need. First up is this Vic Firth felt beater, which I've had for a long time, and it's gotten a lot of use. Just a great all-around punchy kick drum tone. Next is the Brooks Wackerman wood model from Innovative Percussion. Really punchy, but great low end as well, if I want, more of a modern, clicky kind of sound. And then finally, the Cloud Beater from Innovative Percussion. Great for the vintage sound, or say a singer-songwriter track where I don't want a whole lot of punch from the kick drum, just more of a mellow, muted tone. The Ludwig Classic Maple kick drum is just an amazing all-around kick drum sound. If I want something a little more specialized, super punchy with no ring whatsoever, I'll swap in this Ludwig 70s single-headed drum that does pretty much nothing but low-end slap. It's a great sounding drum. You'll notice the 1-inch post on the tom mount, so I can mix and match any other toms that I want if I'm using this kit. Without question, the item that I switch out the most is the snare drum, and which is why I have about 50 of them in here, because the snare drum makes such a big difference on just the sound, the feel, the vibe of a track. One really important thing is every snare stand I own has these True Vibes isolation mounts, which are $20 each, and they make a huge difference on the tone of your snare drum. You just get so much more punch and bottom end out of them. I can't recommend these highly enough. $20, it'll change your snare drum sound. The second most swapped thing on my kit is the hi-hat cymbals. This is my go-to pair of just a starting point. It's a pair of Crescent 15-inch fat hats made by Sabian. They just have a really nice balance of, clarity. They're not too high, they're not too low. They speak nicely, and they record really well. From there, I go lots of different directions. Bigger, smaller, higher, lower, thinner, trashier, tighter, whatever the track calls for, but this is a good place to start. The classic maple toms are just really punchy and versatile and warm sounding. I can use them in a lot of different ways. If I want something more specialized, say for example a 70s kind of thing, I'll swap either the 70s concert tom kit or the GMS kit, which is tuned really high, kind of like a 70s fusion kit. Or these 80s GMS maple toms, which are kind of tuned for an 80s sort of sound. One important point on the rack toms, when I'm switching them out, every tom has to have a bracket that fits 12.7 millimeters for the tom arm, and I have a couple different posts that all are 1 inch, so they fit in the bass drum tom base. I'm always going for the most low end and tone out of the toms that I can get, so I swear by suspension mounts on my rack toms, and on the floor toms I'm using the True Vibes isolation mounts. They really work, they're really inexpensive, and I highly recommend you get them. As far as crash cymbals, Sabian knocked it out of the park with their Complex Thin Line for me. Basically, I just swap out a different size depending on what the track calls for. I have them from 16 inch to 22 inches, and I just put the right size up that fits the track. I'm done. These things sound amazing. They just do everything I want a crash cymbal to do. A recent addition is the cymbal resonance system, these little isolation mounts that just sort of cushion the cymbal and allow it to speak a whole lot more cleanly. I really like these, and I now have them on every cymbal stand I have. There's just a big difference in how they sound. They just sound so much more lush and open. I'd say about half the tracks I cut don't even call for ride cymbal. When they do, I usually start with a Sabian 20-inch Artisan Elite. Just a beautiful all-around cymbal. It records really well. If the track needs something higher or lower, there are lots of other options as well. Given all this flexibility, it's really easy for me to cover a wide range of sonic territory with this kit alone. So if you need drum tracks for your songs, please find me the link in the description. And if you're interested in the microphones, the preamps, the second kit, and how it all works together in my studio, please see the link for my website, Creating the Sound. Thanks for watching.